All right, we're going to start recording on the mixer in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, and welcome to the Drive Your Line podcast. This is where we talk about everything karting, all aspects, chassis, engines, manufacturers, rules, races, series, and so much more. Be sure to come back and listen. Well, good evening and welcome back after a slight hiatus. I hope everybody made it through Christmas and New Year's and kart week in Daytona. I know we barely did. Poor Alan, he got super sick and we were without him for 6 days. So he did make a recovery well enough that he was able to make it to the track to watch his kart go well, better than it has been in the past few years. But we're happy to see that, quote, Fat Ass made several laps around the track with its new pilot, Rhett Thomas. And we're pretty proud of that little accolade. I hope that everybody had a successful kart week. I know we certainly did. Our juniors performed very well, all three hitting the podium in 2 of the events. We had 4 total. 2 of the events, we swept the podium with a first, second, and third in both events. So that was in 100cc air-cooled tag junior. And I invite all of you who run 100cc air-cooled motors, i.e. Rock, Vortex Rock, 100cc, or KA100, you guys take off all the sprint crap and let's go road racing. Try it once. If you need some information on what you're going to need to go road racing, please reach out to me at Christy at driveyourline.com, and I will be happy to assist you in what you're going to need to be legal, eagle, and super safe to go road racing. You're going to spend less money road racing, and you're going to have just as much fun, if not more. You're going to learn really what a draft is all about. A draft is not what you experience in sprint racing. If you experience a draft at well over 100 mile an hour in a straight line with about 10 of your friends, that's a draft. But we would love to be able to help you get to a road race event, even if it's once to try it. Again, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find information on how to contact us at dylkartsport.com, or you can call me at 601-278-9197, and we are happy to assist you. Other news, we really don't have a whole lot, though there's a whole lot going on in the industry. CKNA South just ran at Jacksonville, and they had a very nicely attended event. I don't have any of the particulars on the finals because I didn't have time to look them up. That's just the way it is. But I will have some information. I will post that on the Drive Your Line podcast and Drive Your Line Kart Sport social media. So if you are interested in those details, I will be sure to get them posted for you. I'm not going to waste a lot of time with a lot of aimless ramble when we have somebody that is as important and as iconic to our sport as Lynn Haddock. And I've known Lynn since I was about 9 years old. And I remember the first time I met Lynn, he's an intense personality. And I was driving for somebody who was also an equally intense personality. So I was kind of used to that. And it is just, he's no bullshit. Lynn's right from the hip. If you ask him a question, he's going to give you an answer. You may not like the delivery. You may not like the answer, but it's going to be the truth. And I have relied on him for decades. If I have a question, Lynn, I got a question. It might be something super stupid and it might be something super serious, but he always has the answers I'm looking for. And I'm not going to waste any more time. And we're going to bring in Lynn Haddock from Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Choo Choo himself. Oh, there you are.
Good evening. Good evening.
How are you this evening, Lynn?
I'm well. Trying to
I'm glad to hear that. I am very glad to hear that. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I know that your schedule gets incredibly busy. It's not just going to races anymore and participating. I know that you're all over the globe. You know, there's days I've called you up and you call me back days later. Hey, I was blah, blah, blah. And it's someplace out of the country. So I'm glad to see you don't let any grass grow under your feet.
Well, at this point, I'm fortunate that I can still keep up with the pace. So as long as I can go, I'm going to try.
So Lynn, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of everything. When and how did you start kart racing?
Well, it all started with me disassembling my father's lawnmower. He had one of those, the kind that you could put it in gear, and away it would go. Well, I took all of that, put it over onto this little wood contraption, and I had the first car. Of course, when he came home, he was not at all pleased, and basically told me if I would put his lawnmower back together, he would buy me a go-kart. So that's how it all started. And went and bought me a Putnik with a four-stroke on it, and that's where it all started.
So when I got involved in karting, I was in South Florida, so we did not have a large contingency of four-cycle. So when we moved, from South Florida to Ohio, and we still don't have a large contingency of four-cycle, it was really kind of a shock to me when all of a sudden the wave of four-strokes came into competition. And you did both. You did four-cycle and two-cycle, correct?
Yeah, but that was a long way down the line when we finally found the kart track in Chattanooga and went out there to ride this four-stroke thing that I had. We were the only four-stroke inside. So it was not for, I don't know, the mid-'80s, '90s, or something like that before the four-stroke stuff got going. We got a heck of an echo here that's making it very difficult. I'm hearing myself echo when I'm talking, and kind of a pain. Is there anything
Keep
we
talking.
can do
Let me
to
see.
fix that?
What do you got, Daniel?
It would certainly be a whole lot better.
Is that better, Lynn?
No, every time I say something, it repeats it. Yeah, it's not good.
Do we want to reboot?
We
I
can.
don't know.
Everything's
Whatever it
solid.
takes to get it fixed. It's not easy hearing myself every time I speak.
With the
I
delay.
hear it. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and back out, and we can come back. So everybody hold still because we'll be right back. Lynn, go ahead and log out and log back in for us.
Okay.
So we're waiting for Lynn. We had a little bit of technical difficulty. I think it might be on his end because it's a cellular service. But I am pretty confident that he'll be able to log back in. Maybe we can eliminate some of that feedback for him. And it is a distraction because as you're talking, you're hearing yourself again in some sort of delay. So while you're trying to talk here, you're like, wait a minute, I just said that. All right. But we are going to wait for Lynn to log back in. Are we back?
I think we're back.
Is it any better?
I don't know. I get it. No, still doing it. Same thing when I speak, it speaks back.
What is your cell phone service in your shop typically? Is it typically good?
I have my own tower in my shop. It's excellent.
Okay, well, it's not that.
No, it's not that. Sure. No idea.
Hold on, we're trying to dial you in here. So after you take Pop's tractor apart and decide to put it on a wooden go-kart, and you end up with your first go-kart, you ended up racing in the Nashville area. Was that correct?
No, we started by just going out to the local track and just riding. And then when it came time for the racing, we put the thing, put it back in the car, and get up in the stands and watch. This was the deal we had made with Mama. We could have a go-kart, but we could not race.
Oh.
Which all really ended in a big disaster because one weekend there was a state championship race down in Georgia. About half the people from the local track took off to Georgia. So the local guy said to my dad, why don't you let him just ride around in the back? So we have enough to on the track.
Yeah.
So didn't see any harm in that. So that's what we did. We
did.
didn't create any
Create any
problems.
problems.
The problems
The
came
problems
when some
came when
little old
some little
biddy
old
from the
biddy from the
track
track
called my
called my
mother
mother
Monday to
Monday
tell her
to
how
tell her
well I
how
had
well
done
I
in the
had done in the
races.
races.
Oh, and you and Pop were
Well,
busted.
we were
We were
busted so
busted
bad.
so bad.
Then it came
Then it
out that
came
we were
out that
running
we
a
were
four
running a
stroke
four
and got
stroke and
lapped a
got
couple of
lapped a couple of
times. And
times. And
then it
then it
turned into,
turned
well,
into,
if you're
well,
going
if
to
you're
do
going
it,
to do it,
get you something
get you
you can
something
do it
you can
with,
do it with,
which
which
prompted us
prompted
to
us to
purchase
purchase the
the first
first
two-stroke cart.
two-stroke cart.
And then it
And then
just,
it just,
it was on
was
from
on
there.
from there.
So that was about what year?
59.
59.
Yeah,
Wow.
59.
59.
Could have been
Could
late
have been late
58, but I
58,
think
but
it
I
was
think
probably
it was
more
probably more
early
early
59.
59.
So you probably understand the history of karting prior, to my involvement much better. But about when was the first time that organized karting started? I mean, we all know that the first race happened as soon as the second kart was ever made, right? So when all did that happen? I know it was in California, and it was in what time frame do you think?
Well, it was
Well,
all
it was all
during this
during this
particular time
particular
frame
time
because, as
frame.
I
Because as
said,
I said,
the
the
reason
reason
I got
I
to
got to
join that
join
first
that
race
first
here at the
race here at the
local track
local
was
track was
because
because
everyone had
everyone
gone
had gone
to
to
a
a
state
state
race
race
in
in
Georgia.
Georgia.
So
So
it was
it
already
was
well
already well
underway
underway
when I got
when I
in.
got in.
Yeah, it
We
sounds
got
like
We
in
it.
in
got in
58. We
58.
bought the
We
thing
bought
in
the thing in
58.
58.
And it could
And it could
honestly have
honestly have
been,
been,
all of this
all
could
of
have
this
been in
could have been in
58.
58.
I
Right.
just can't
I just can't
remember.
remember.
But
So
there was
There was
organized
organized
racing
racing
going.
going.
There was tracks popping up everywhere, and as I said, there was already, I think it was called the Go Kart Club of America back then, which ultimately evolved into the IKF. But
IKF.
it was well underway. I would say that was actually, now that I think about it, I believe I did the disassembly on the lawnmower in the summer of '58. So that would have been when all this happened. And as I said, organized racing was already going at that time.
So by the time you and I met, which was probably late 70s, 78, 79, 80, somewhere around in there,
Yeah.
you had established quite an accomplished career at that point. At what time did you and Pop wake up and say, you know what? We need to really take this serious. This needs to be what we do. At what time did Haddock Limited come into play?
Well, Haddock Limited came into play. That's another pretty funny story. We had the first cart that we bought after the Putnik. We bought a single wheel drive simplex with a little 510 West Bend on it. That evolved after about a year into a Dart A-bone with a Max 6. Well, back then stuff was not quite as reliable as it is now. So sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't start. And when it didn't start, you had to work on it a little bit and then it would usually run. Usually it was something out of adjustment because it had a point ignition and things like that. Well, we had a friend of ours who was a go-karter and he was also a stock car racer. He took care of the engine side of things. Pop and I took care of the cart. But when the motor wouldn't run, we'd take the motor off and go over to our buddy Marvin and he would make it run again. So the only problem with that was if the stock car needed work, Lynn's go-kart motor had to sit. So this happened one weekend and I told Pop, I said, hey, I can fix it. Let me work on it. Oh, you don't know anything about it. I said, oh, yeah, I've watched him. I know exactly what's wrong with it. I can fix it. So Pop's response, typical Pop, he said, well, it ain't running now. You can't hurt it. Go right ahead. It ran better than it had ever run. And that was the last time anyone ever worked on one of my engines. I was 10 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And by the
You
time
sound
I
just like Lake.
was,
Lake has a very similar story.
yeah, I think we both kind of came from similar backgrounds on that deal. We were tinkerers. It's kind of a lost art. You don't find too
It
many
is.
people like that anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
used to
I
that was
agree.
just used to that is kind of the way it was. Well, not so much anymore. But anyway, after about a year, people started asking, well, who works on this thing, man? It runs really good all the time. Well, the kid over there works on it. So next thing you know, well, can I bring mine over and let you work on it? And all of this was going on, down in the basement. Well, we constructed a workbench right adjacent to the washing machine down in the basement, and that's where Haddock Limited was really born. And then, from there, it evolved into reconstructing a separated garage that we had um, on the outside there, so I could have a little more room. And in 1970, I think it was 1972, I actually incorporated. What was I in 1972? 12 years old?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we incorporated because one of my parents' lawyer friend told them, there could be some problem with liability with your kid working on stuff if
Yeah.
something would
Yeah.
go, if you're fixing this guy's brakes and the brakes fail and he goes through a wall and gets hurt, there could be some problems. So we need to get you incorporated,
Right.
which
Right.
is what you did back then. And so we incorporated in 1972.
So when did the limited part become? Is that part of your incorporation from the beginning, or was that added as you started to get more involved with international equipment?
Limited was there from the very beginning, and it was because it was a flashy name that was used in a lot of
Mhm.
racing entities in Europe. It
Yeah.
was nothing to do with legal or illegal or law. It was just kind of a cool sounding name that was not used very much over here. So we just used it.
So
It's actually Haddock Limited Incorporated.
incorporated.
Could have
Got it.
easily been Lynn Haddock Incorporated, whatever incorporated. We just threw the limited in because it kind of sounded cool. That was all.
So about the time that I was introduced to you, obviously through George, and I think the first time I ever met Lynn Haddock was probably the Barnesville National. And you had back then an engine builder had 5, 6, 7, 10 drivers with them. I guess that you would call that a team by today's rights. And it was the engine builder that was also the chassis provider and seller. And, what do you see today in our sport that you miss from back then in those days when we had one person, we all traveled together, we ate together, we went to races together. What part of the dynamic that we have today do you feel is missing some of yesterday?
Well, there is, I'm sure, at some level of karting, there is probably still the same thing as we had back then. But when you get up to the bigger end of karting, the national level, it's pretty much not there at all.
Yeah.
What you find more than anything nowadays is daddy shows up with the kid, and the kid has a helmet and a nice set of driving suits, and daddy has a checkbook.
Yeah.
And so the way most of it is conducted now is that you go find a team and you find out how much it costs, and there you go. Now, part of that has happened. Well, it's twofold. People are not the gearheads that they used to be.
Mm-mm.
They too busy having their head stuck in a phone or stuck on a computer. We don't have shop class anymore. We don't have machine shop class. We don't have welding class. I mean, there's lots of reasons for this, but as a rule, kids don't become gearheads. Consequently, they go and take daddy's checkbook and find them a place to get them something good to run. The
Right.
other item that's a very big thing that was not so much of a factor back then, or not as big a factor, karting has become so technical with so
Yes.
much so much computer aided things. I mean, we have devices on the track that show us the lap time. It draws the map. You can have throttle position, brake position, on and on and on. You acquire all of this data. Well, you need to have someone who can interpret all this data
Decipher it all.
because, yeah,
Mhm.
it's there's just a little more to it than there used to be. In fact, there's a lot more to it than there used to be.
Well, I think that the data available is what people, rely on so much. I mean, back then, you were listening to hear if the carburetor was off on the top, do you have to richen it up a little bit on the top end? Are you letting it bog too much on the bottom end? We were actually dialing our carburetors when we were juniors, and I remember when I first started dialing carburetors with George, I think we popped 6 of them in the weekend, and he's like, "Well, she'll either be an eternal dumbass or you're gonna lose a lot of money, bud. It's gonna be one of the 2, but she's gonna get it before the weekend's over." And we don't have that anymore, and especially with the invention of some of the carburetors and engines we have currently, they take that element out. We don't have drivers reaching over and tweaking like we used to. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that the equipment has improved drastically and become a lot more dependable. But you're right; these kids aren't learning what they should be doing with a wrench.
Well,
Um,
you have to want to learn it.
yeah,
Okay. You have to have some interest in learning it. And they're really not interested in why it goes fast. They're interested in, I want to win.
right.
We had a driver one time, I won't mention any names.
Hmm.
It was back in the Formula A days.
Oh
And
yeah.
we had 2 carts. So we put them both out there, and driver jumped in one, went out and buzzed around a little bit, came in, stood up, sit right down. We pushed the second one off, did a few laps, came back in. What do you think? This one's bad and this one's worse. Oh, well, why? Oh, I don't know why.
Oh,
So that was the only data that we had to work with. Well, nowadays, you can download the data from the little box on the cart and see a
mhm.
lot of what's going on. And the other thing, too, and part of the thing of being under one of these big tents where you've got someone interpreting the data, you got 3 guys or 4 guys or 5 guys in there under the same tent in the same class. Usually one of them is going to be the pace setter. So they take his data and show it to the other ones who are not so quick and show them, okay, here's where he's making time. And then from the engine side, you have engine guys who they pretty much know what's going on with the engine before they ever get to the track. So it's a lot more scientific than it ever was. It would be extremely hard for an independent nowadays to do well unless they got into it very, very early. And I don't mean just the driver, the tuner or the
Mhm.
father or whoever's going to be, spinning the wrenches and making the decisions. Very difficult to do all of that because there's so much more to learn now than there was back in the day.
Yeah, I agree. I look back at how we used to do things when I was a kid and look at how they do things today, and I do feel sorry for the fact that they are not getting acclimated with being more hands-on as a driver and getting their hands dirty. I know in our team specifically, at the end of the day, our drivers take their equipment apart. They take the front end off, they get everything, prepared for the chassis to go on the table, and they put everything back together. They clean the engine, they check for any cracks, check the welds, make sure there's no other mechanicals that they can physically see or handle themselves or bring to somebody else's attention. And, I feel bad because these kids, they struggle to take a side pot off.
Yeah.
And, we try to get them involved as much as we can. But like you said, it's become so technical and so specialized that we have taken ourselves out of that realm where there's more hands on in the pits. And now the hands are specialized and you just sit back and drive.
But there again, you have to want to know
Yep.
about that stuff. You're not born being a gearhead.
No.
I became a gearhead because my dad was a gearhead and I'm following my dad around. And when he'd swing a hammer and do something, next thing you know, I was wanting to do the same thing he did.
Yeah.
He would take a couple of wrenches and take a nut and a bolt apart. Well, I'm there trying to figure out how I can do the same thing. Of course, I had the wrong wrenches in my hand, and he would show me, okay, this is what you have to do for this size bolt. This is what you have to do. So you are not born being a gearhead, but you have to eat and do it. Eat it, sleep it.
Yeah. You're right.
It just it's not something you're born with. You develop it. And
Absolutely.
when daddy is a computer nerd, you can't expect son to become a gearhead.
So
Just the
when
way it
you
is.
when you look around at and let's back up a little bit, not quite the national level team, not a factory level team. Do you think that the sport suffers at the club level?
Sport suffers at the club level because we don't have someone has to be the teacher. Okay, sport suffers at the club level because there is a shortage of small kart shops. You know, big mail order outfits have really hurt the small kart shops. The small kart shops are the one that are down at the local track showing the guy
Yep.
who just bought a go-kart, here's how you line up the sprocket. Here's how you put the chain together. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. Someone has to show people how to do it. Okay.
Absolutely.
But if you are going to end up going to a team where all you do is climb in the cart and go do it, you don't need to know all that stuff anyway.
No.
So it's,
So
one thing has more or less led to another, but it all started with big mail order houses
mhm,
who offered better pricing than the little one light bulb cart shop.
mhm.
And next thing you know, the little one light bulb cart shop's not there. Now there's no one to train the guy who just bought his new cart and engine and all the parts and pieces through the mail order. Well, now he goes to the track, has no idea what he's doing. And there's no one there to hold his hand and show him how.
So when I moved down here to Mississippi, we went to the local track, which is the track that Lake built, and obviously the track that Alan grew up karting and started karting at. And typical little bull ring, reminded me of Columbiana, maybe half the size of Adkins, if that's a possibility. But we walk in and people are changing gear to change clutch engagement, and we look at each other and it's like, well, theoretically that works, but there's a far more effective way to do this. So we spent the afternoon teaching people, how to put their clutch together. They didn't know what they didn't know, and there wasn't anybody there to teach them, right?
Yeah, and that's
So
the problem.
that's how our cart shop got started.
Yeah.
Is it started with parts. It started with 4-cycle parts, which I'm not a 4-cycle person, so it was a real struggle for me. But mechanics are mechanics, and you figure it out, and it makes sense. And then it morphed into carts and tires and extra parts and selling carts and selling chassis and supporting a chassis manufacturer and creating a team. And it's kind of juggernauted, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But if I didn't have the background that I had as a kid, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah. You weren't born knowing it.
No, God, no. And you know who I grew up knowing it with.
Yeah.
And who taught me, and you either learned it or you died, basically. But it was kind of an eye opener because it made me realize that, like Adkins, there's no more club there. Columbiana's gone. The tracks that I grew up at home, Fremont's still there. They have a club that's doing well. Obviously, Camden is always going to do well. It's a phenomenal facility run by great people. And some of the people that I grew up with, like Mark Dismore, they now have tracks of their own, thank goodness. And I think that they use what they learned when they were young and grew up in the sport like we did, and they utilize that to help push their company and their business and their stuff forward. Um, and now we're starting to get more here. We're adding new asphalt to the track here. Finally got that rolling. It should be done in February. So we'll be back up and racing here very soon. And once that happens, that takes us away from our team focus and it pulls us back into our racetrack to build that core bottom level grassroots mom and pop take junior racing atmosphere. And I hope that we're successful. I'm pretty sure that we'll be okay. But like you said, they have to want to do it. You can't make people want to go out and work, learn.
Well, it's harder to teach people who have no mechanical background at all. Back in the 50s, when I grew up, most people worked on their own automobiles.
Yep.
That's really and truly where it started. I mean, you worked on your own car because in many cases you couldn't afford to have someone else do it, and the cars were not so complicated, so you ended up learning how to do stuff yourself. When you learn how to know the difference in a half-inch wrench and a 9/16 wrench, it can apply to the car you're driving. It can apply to the lawnmower. It can apply to the go-kart. It's just a matter of tinkering with mechanical stuff. And
A-
nowadays, that is a lost art. Like I said, you don't even find that sort of stuff in schools anymore.
And the
And
bad
that
thing
is the
is,
problem. I mean, we're heading off down the road to, who's going to change the light bulbs?
yeah, yeah,
I know people right now that don't know how to change a light bulb, you know, and that is a very scary thing because
we have
pretty
one
soon,
family.
it's a lost art. Pretty soon, right now people are paying someone to change a light bulb. What's going to happen when there's no one left to pay?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's exactly what's gonna happen. Um, I know that in our particular case, we have one family that when we met them, they came, from the atmosphere where they were paying for either arrive and drive or a team atmosphere. They show up, they do their thing. And so when they came here and we didn't have that opportunity, we kind of took them in and say, "Hey, let's, change spark plug, get your chain aligned, get everything done." And now he's racing at stars and doing well and making finals and working on most of his stuff himself at 15 years old. And, you know, again, 2 years ago, even aligning the chain was a challenge. So he's made great strides and he says it's actually helped him with his confidence behind the wheel.
but you have to have people that want to do it.
Yeah.
I actually worked for a guy, and I was, the father was sitting there watching me do stuff, and I would, he seemed to have some interest in what I was doing, so I started explaining to him, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it, yada yada yada. And finally, he just told me, Lynn, I don't need to know all that stuff. That's why I pay you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm like,
That's why my
well,
daddy paid an engine builder.
okie dokie. I thought I was maybe trying to help you along here where maybe one day you wouldn't need to pay me to do it, but there was no interest there.
So
So just a different, it's just a whole different world than the world that Lake and I came up in. Guarantee you, it's totally different.
and let's talk about that for just a moment. You and Lake are still close friends,
Oh yeah.
and you guys met as competitors. And for anybody who has seen my previous podcast with Lake Speed, he is the first American to ever win the FIA CIK World Championships. And you were a competitor in those events several times yourself, correct?
Oh, I went and tried to run one time. We got this bright idea. We actually started off in the beginning the way we ended, me and Lake. Lake drove, I worked. Then we decided we would expand and take this big team and blah de da de da de da, all of which turned out to be a grand disaster. Uh, but we were always competitors. We were competitors during the time that we were trying to win the world championships. When we
Yeah.
go to the nationals here in the States, we were trying to kill each other. But when we were on that international program, we were very focused and it was very defined who was doing what. And the fact that we were both gearheads,
Yeah. Yeah.
we did not make, it was not a situation where Lake said, okay, I don't care what you do, you just go do it, I'm going to drive it. Everything we did, we talked about it.
Yeah.
Everything. And it was because we all came from the same mold.
The same background.
Yeah, and we always got better results when we would say, okay, here's the issue. What are we going to do? A, B, C, D. What's our choices?
Yeah.
What's the good part? What's the bad part? We'd analyze every little bit of it before we did anything. And
So I'm gonna
that was nothing more than that's how we came up.
So I'm going to share the information that you sent me earlier today. I asked Lynn if he had a quick rundown of statistics, and this is what he sent me. Lynn Haddock has won 35 plus Duffies, several IKF national championships before there were Duffies. Made 50 in WKA if you count winter and spring national wins. 2 PKA, if you don't know what PKA is, that's the Professional Karting Association, which was amazing. I loved to watch that entire series. Was able to compete in it twice, so that was awesome. But 2 PKA championships, 1 major international events in Hong Kong, New Zealand, Santo Domingo, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and Canada. Now, keep in mind that this all went on during a time frame when we were not actively traveling all over the country just willy-nilly, not like you can today. So to have somebody go compete internationally was like, "Ooh, that's pretty impressive." Now, I know when you went to Venezuela, didn't Odom go with you and a couple others as well?
Yeah, Seligren and Odom.
Oh, yeah, Scott. Gosh,
Yeah.
there's a name from the past. Whatever happened to that man?
No idea. Someone told me a few years ago that Jim, the father, had passed away, but
Yes,
I
he
don't
did.
honestly know what happened to Scott.
Yeah.
And he had a brother that was always there,
Yep.
helping too. I don't know whatever happened to any of those
Great
guys.
people.
Yeah,
Hell of a
great
driver.
people.
Hell of a driver.
Great people. Absolutely.
So I know that on one of the New Zealand trips, Scott Pruitt went with you, and Scott
Yep.
Pruitt was always part of that Haddock Limited team, and obviously from the West Coast. And how did that come into play? How did the Pruitt Haddock
Through Margate.
bogination happen?
Through Margate. We
Yep.
were both drivers for Margate. So, you know, that was the connection. We had known each other for a lot of years. I'd known, Bob. His father taught me a lot of stuff. His father was one of the
His father was
smartest.
amazing.
He was one of the smartest people I had ever met. The thing he taught me more than anything was how to think about stuff, how to analyze something. I would ask him a question and he would walk me through, how do we look at this? The pros, the cons. Just, he was an amazing engineer and he had that mentality, and he taught me how to think along those lines. But anyway, we'd known the Pruitts forever, and then of course when we both ended up at Margate as team drivers, then the bond was even tighter.
So that was the mid to late 70s into the 80s, correct?
Yeah.
So it was yourself?
Yeah, up to about when Scott went on to Trans Am.
Yeah. And that was an epic period altogether there too.
Yeah, Margate had very close connections with Ford because they did a lot. Well, Margate and Marquette Tool and Die and Transdraw was the 3 companies. And Marquette Tool and Die did a lot of work for Ford, and Transdraw made a lot of parts for Ford. So there was a very close connection with Ford Motor Company and Marquette Tool and Die, Margate, Transdraw, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, that led to the connection with Roush. And that's basically, Scott's whole thing, I think from the beginning when he took his first breath, was to be a professional race car driver. And Margate facilitated opening a lot of doors for him. Now, he certainly was able to bounce the ball once the ball was handed to him, but they were able to make a lot of things happen, that helped him. And that he pretty much rolled out of karting about, I think about 84, 85.
Yeah.
And started rolling into Trans Am and did very well in Trans Am.
Ran
Rolled into
IndyCar a little bit.
IndyCar,
Yep.
did a lot of testing. And there again, the connection that we all had with Bridgestone helped Scott
Yep.
when IndyCar was using Bridgestone tires. And then he ended up landing in endurance racing with the IMSA stuff, and that's where he really and truly made a name for himself.
Oh, yeah.
He had more success there than he did,
Oh, Scott is a dyed-in-the-wool road racer. No doubt. No doubt.
Well, a racer is a racer.
Yeah.
Scott was very good in karts. He was very good in Trans Am. He was very good in IndyCar, very good in road racing. He landed in road racing and was very successful for a very long period of time. And that's where he, finally drew the line and said, okay, I'm done.
So I'm going to go through a couple of slides. Daniel, you have that first slide. So this is the Lynn Haddock I remember. This is the guy I met. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Go ahead with number 2.
That's good.
So about what time frame did this advertising come out?
Oh, that would have been probably mid-70s.
So probably like your first big layout, because whoever did this did a beautiful job. It's very well done.
I can't even remember who actually did it. I had several people along the way helping me do advertising. I mean, I never had an advertising agency because I couldn't afford that. But I'd always had somebody handing me a drawing or handing me a sketch or something, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I'll use that. And that's exactly where that came from. I've got a few T-shirts that came,
I still have
the same
my
way.
spaghetti strap T-shirt. Needless to say, it does not fit like it used to back then. Go ahead with the next slide.
Yeah, 1975.
Yeah,
I am paying for that one to this day.
Is that the new shoulder?
No, the shoulder, the shoulder that I just had done 2 or 3 years ago, I just wore out. In fact, I've got to have another one done too.
Oh, Lord.
No, that I believe created the back problems that I'm having now. Actually, that happened, and I went to the hospital, and this happened on Saturday, and they said, "Yeah, you bruised your back pretty bad." And I said, "Well, nothing broken? No, nothing broken." I said,
All right,
"Does that mean I can race tomorrow?" I said, "Well, if you're going to hurt, but if you want to race, go right ahead." Of course, I did.
Yep.
Well, by Thursday, I couldn't even move. I mean, I couldn't do anything. So went back to the doctor here in Chattanooga after I was back home, and they said, "Well, of course it hurts. You've got 3 crushed vertebrae."
Oh, shiza.
So, and at that point, lay on the floor, lay flat.
Yep.
You'll be okay in a couple months. Well, that was all fine for about 35 or 40 years. Well, now I think, in all honesty, a lot of it's coming back to bite me.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, it does.
It is what it is. That was one that was on me. I made a very bad mistake and ended up on my head. No one to blame except myself.
Tell me about the bottom picture.
Bottom picture was right after Duffy moved to Chattanooga. One day, Faye calls me up, and she said, "Have you been over to visit your new neighbor?" And I go, "Well, what new neighbor? What are you talking about?" "Well, Duffy." I go, "Duffy? Duffy lives in Oregon." "No, Duffy lives in Ottawa." And I go, "In Ottawa? How long has he been in Ottawa?" "Oh, well, a couple, 3 months." So I hung up the phone, and I had his number from, I mean, we kept in touch all those years. I mean, we actually met many years ago. I ended up getting elected onto the IKF board. I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, maybe. And Duffy was, very much involved in that. Well, that's where I met Duffy, and we kept up with each other all those years. So when she told me that, I called him up. I said, "What's this I hear you live in Ottawa?" "Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to call you. We're still getting settled in and unpacking boxes and everything." So
We'll
anyway,
do the next one.
once he did, we started hooking up and going here and going there, and I took him to a few vintage races with me, and that's when we took that picture. One day I said, "Well, hey, I think we'll just drag all these trophies out and do a Duffy picture." And he thought that
Yeah.
was a cool idea. But
So
we went to quite a few vintage races after I knew he was here and everything, and he was getting on up in age where he didn't he drove, but he wasn't going to jump in the car and go 500 miles or anything. So
yeah.
he jump in the truck with us and go vintage racing. I actually asked him one day. I said, "Have you ever been to the United States museum, aircraft museum, Air Force Museum? That's what it
Mhm.
was." And he said, "No, I've heard about it." Well, there happened to be a vintage race, one of the oldest ones up in Fremont, Ohio. Well, this is
Yep.
just north of Dayton. Well, Dayton is where
Wright
uh,
Patterson.
the museum is right there at Wright Patterson. So I told him, I said, why don't we jump in the car and go a day early, and we'll go do the museum, and then we'll go up to Fremont and do the thing. He said, yeah, that's great. So we went to the museum. While we were there, we found out that on the Sunday, this was been on Friday, on the Sunday, they were going to have the biggest model airplane get together
Oh, wow.
there at Wright Patterson, all the RC planes. And Duffy was right into all that stuff. Matter of fact, I wish I had the camera working. I could show you some of his
Yep.
planes up on the roof. I've got a lot of his planes that he cleared out and gave them to me, and I tried to give them to some of the local flying people, and they said, "Oh, no one runs nitro planes anymore, so we could probably get you 10 or 15 bucks for them." I said,
Oh my
"Well,
gosh.
for 10 or 15 bucks, I think I'll just." Are you seeing any of this?
Yes, I am. I'm drooling.
I said, "For 10 or 15 bucks, I think I'll just hang them up on my ceiling." So that's what I did, and they're still
There they
hanging
are.
up there. But so we went to the Air Force Museum, and then we went up to Fremont. We came back and went to the fly-in thing for all the RC stuff, and he had actually never seen the jets, and neither had I. They had
Oh,
some
yeah.
jets that were amazingly fast. But side story to that, we were standing there, and there was this or there was this plane, which was a um, P-51, but it was a twin boom or twin engine P-51. I forget the number. They only made a very few of them, and it caught my eye because I'd never seen it before. And I says to Duffy, I said, "Look at this thing." He goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know about that plane. I had a buddy of mine that flew that thing back in the war." And I went, "Really?" He
What's the
says,
chances?
"Yeah." He said, "You know what? Hang on." Pulls his phone out. He says, "Let's just call him." So he
Wow.
calls this cowboy up, and he's talking to him about this plane, and they're going back and forth about how he flew it in the war and this, that, and the other. And I'm going, man, this is some pretty amazing stuff.
Wow.
But Duffy was Duffy was Duffy. He was an amazing guy.
He
I've
knew
never
everybody.
met anybody that had so many stories, interesting stories that you could tell. We drove to Newcastle one time. 7.5 hours we're driving in the truck. He's telling stories for 7.5 hours. And when we got there, we sat in the truck for 15 minutes so he could finish the last story he was telling. He was an amazing guy.
Couldn't get out prematurely.
No, no.
Go ahead and hit that last slide, Daniel. Oh, the one right before that one. I'm sorry. Before that one. I guess we were 3 slides back. So this is Is this at the museum or is this at the house? Is Donna having to dust all that? What are we seeing here?
No, that was actually my trophy room when I lived at home before we got married. We had a big open porch, like a lot of houses back
Yep.
in that era had. It was a pretty old house, had been completely redone. We called it the Haddock Hotel. But they took one end of the house that used to be just an open air deal, and they enclosed it and turned it into a trophy room that was about 20 by 40, something like that. And that's where all the loot got put. And then, when I got married and moved away, we just kept putting the loot in there. And then when my parents passed away and we decided to sell the house, well, actually, my mom passed away. My dad kept living in the house. And then, I don't know, 10 or 12 years later, after he passed away, then we decided, okay, we got to figure out what we're going to do with the house and what we're going to do with all the loot. So I basically took all the Duffies and just a few of the important ones, the PK championships, the one that I got when we went to the world championships, this and that. I kept a few, and then I gave the rest of them to the Ohio Valley Kart Club, and Gene Stafford was a friend of
Yep.
mine at the time. He came down. He brought a dually with a 40 foot gooseneck behind it. We filled the gooseneck up, we filled the bed of the truck up, and we filled the back seat of the dually up.
Good
And
grief.
he left. They were going to rebadge them and take them apart and put them back together.
Use them for club trophies.
Use them for the club. And
So
that would have been,
the
I
one
don't
right
know, that
before.
would have been 15 years ago, something like that.
So tell me about these pictures. I know that the top one is probably what, Long Beach? Yeah.
Yeah, Long Beach.
So who are you on the podium there with?
That is Todd. I'm not sure who the other one. Oh, I think it's Jeff Nelson. I think it's Todd, myself, and Jeff Nelson, if I'm not mistaken. I can't see it real good. I believe
And
that'd be correct. And then the one there in the bottom is just me and Scott with the Bridgestone lady.
and then was the bug
The
era?
bug. The
Was that
bug
before
was
Margay?
that's back when I used to run for K&P. This was before the Margay days. I used to run for K&P, and they had a big connection to Hurst Earhart. And of course, Lynn Vaughn was very connected to the Hurst
The Hearst
group
shifter
through
lady.
the Hurst shifter. Yeah.
Yep. Everybody
Funny
knows
story
Linda
about
Vaughn.
that. She was from Dalton, which is about 30 miles from here.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either till I went out there to have my picture shot. We went to lunch and got to shooting the bull, and turns out she was from right down the road.
One of the
About a
natives.
year after that, I walked into a little old nightclub here in town, and there her and her sister sat.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, yeah, she was back here visiting her family and had ended up in this little old drinking hole, and walked in, and I went, well, long time no see. And she says, well, ain't been that long.
Go ahead and I think it's the last. There we go. And this is something that's a little more current on the bottom. And obviously the top that's Long Beach again.
Yeah, that's a Long Beach one. I can't tell what year because I can't see the number on the card.
Number's 4.
Number's 4, so it'd have been 1984.
Oh, there you go.
84, I
And
was number 4. 85, I was number 1 because I had won in 84.
so in the bottom picture is a VKA event. And I see Geeson, yourself, and who are the other gentlemen in the picture with you?
Can't see them that good. Oh, I can make it bigger. Okay, the one on the right is Jeff Clunch. He's a long-time friend of mine. He's the only guy I know that has an email address that ends with .gov. Excuse me, NASA.gov.
There you go. There you go.
The
That's
next one
impressive.
there is Shane Davis, another friend of mine from Alabama who is a big farmer. And then I'm not sure who the other one is.
Of all of the eras in karting and all of the packages you have driven, which was your favorite?
The packages?
The class, B stock, laydown, open read, piston port, limited. Which package, which class was the most
Well,
memorable
they
for
were
you?
all okay. They're all very unique. Um, of course, the B stock was a lot of fun because we got to run at a lot of very interesting places. There for a little while, we were running what I call sideshow with the Busch Grand National, which ran at the NASCAR tracks on Saturday. We ran right before they ran, so grandstands full of people. That was kind of cool.
Cleveland
Uh,
Grand Prix.
well, Cleveland Grand Prix was we got to run at Cleveland. We got to run with the Indy cars. We got to run at Atlanta and Rockingham with the NASCARs. We were supposed to go run at one of the short tracks up there, and then once they found out how fast we went, they said, "No, we're not going to have that. We can't have go karts out there upstaging the stock cars."
Yeah.
So that never happened. But we got to run at those places. We got to run at Cleveland Grand Prix with the Indy cars. Of course, Long Beach, that was a big one. We were there for 5 years straight, and it was always a big crowd. Um, lot of interest from the people. We were actually pitted in the arena with the big cars.
Yeah.
With I think it was the first 3 years it was Formula One, and then maybe the last 2 years was IndyCar. But at any rate, we were pitted in with, where all the people come in, and they let them come in the middle and walk around. So there was a lot of public interaction, which was pretty cool.
So
And then you go over to the sprint racing stuff. Needless to say, the PKA thing was by far and away the big thing as
the
far
first
as
water-cooled motor I ever saw was the one you brought to the PKA events. The very first one. And I think you still have it. Was it a Hartman?
no. So
I knew he'd have it. We're going to go in search of. He's gone. Lynn, come back. Is he back? Hey, there he is.
okay, I can't see what I'm showing you, but
Okay, I can.
that should be him.
That's it.
Yeah, it's
Water
it's a
buffalo.
Burton Burton Magnum. I actually sold it, and then it ended up coming back.
Imagine that. I remember seeing that thing at Adkins going, what in the hell is that?
And that's
And it fast. That's what it was. It was fast.
that's the Long Beach cart. It's still around too.
And that was a Margay cart.
Yeah, that's a Margay.
Margay twin.
And that was when Pruitt and I were well involved in the Margay program. Wish I could make this
Amazing.
thing work. I could show you a lot of other stuff around here. But
Well, you know how we fix that? I just bought a really cool new video camera. I'm going to have to make a trip to Chattanooga.
well, you can make a trip, but if I could just make this thing where I could reverse it, we could see a lot of this other stuff that's around here. I don't know what I'm showing you. If you
Well,
can
right
see.
now I have a black screen.
Oh, all right.
So, can you still hear me? He's gone. There he is again. He's getting awfully efficient at getting back in, isn't he?
Hello,
Hey, there you are.
hello.
Hello. We have video, no audio.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I don't think so.
Uh-oh.
Are we there?
Hello?
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Whew, success.
Can you see anything?
Oh my gosh, I see a lot of McCulloghs and all kinds of other stuff.
Okay. Well, see, this is the problem. I don't know what you're seeing. I'm just looking at the back of the camera or back of the
I see
phone.
a couple of 101s. My favorite Mac.
Well, the truth of the matter is, everyone they ever made's here.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
49. Oh my.
we'll have to get this thing. That's, I don't know if you can see that silver one up there, a silver and a red one.
No. There you go. Yes. Yes.
Okay, the silver one. The story behind that was McCullough, when they first were toying with the idea of going to build engines for kart racing. Of course, they had chainsaw businesses all over the country, and they decided that they would send out 50 engines as a test market to see if there was any interest from anybody to do, to do go-kart motors. That particular unpainted one right there is one of the 50. And I understand that there's one other floating around. As far as I know, that's the only ones that still exist. And then the red one right beside it was the same engine, different engine, same model that I restored, and I did it kind of in the early 60s way that everybody did everything with candy apple red paint.
Mm-hmm.
So next time we need to get the thing, the phone fixed where I can walk around and show more stuff.
Well, and like I said, how far is it from here to Chattanooga? You're just outside Chattanooga, right?
Yeah. This is another pretty interesting
6
piece.
hours? That ain't bad.
Can you see this one?
I see the front of the twin cart. Purple cart on the right would be your left.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's a swoopster.
What?
A swoopster. Very low production, kind of a pretty cool piece that
Pretty
was
slick bumper.
made up in Evansville. Very
Really?
nice, very nice item. Down here, can you see the twin engine west bend?
I can.
Yeah, that's about a 58 or 50, no, 60, maybe 61, simplex.
In pristine condition.
Yeah, yeah.
Lynn,
Back
what was the
here,
last cart you ever drove?
can you see the green one?
I can.
Okay, that's a Fox. Again, I'm not sure, probably 1964, something like that.
The old fuel tank on the back. Yes, I remember those days.
Fuel tank, chrome, Mac. And that's an old bird cart with a Clinton down below. I don't know if you can see that. See, the problem is I don't know what I'm showing you because I
Yeah,
can't.
no, we can see it. No, we can see
Okay.
it perfect.
Okay.
So, Lynn, what was the last go-kart you physically raced?
The last go-kart I physically raced was a Buller left-hand Buller kart that I drove at Newton, Iowa. I decided I wanted to try to attain expert status in all 5 divisions of IKF karting. So there was sprint 2-cycle, sprint 4-cycle, dirt 2-cycle, dirt 4-cycle, and road race.
So
And
speedway wasn't in that equation.
Yeah, dirt.
Okay,
Yeah.
so no asphalt oval.
that was not a national. That wasn't a national division back then, as I recall. It was road race, enduro,
Hmm.
sprint racing, 2-cycle, sprint racing, 4-cycle, and then speedway dirt, 2-cycle, speedway dirt, 4-cycle. Anyway, long story short, I had attained expert status in every division except the 2-cycle dirt. And as you know, Kermit's expertise in dirt
Yep,
is,
that's his bag.
yeah. Well, who else? Who else would I go and seek help from? So anyway, I took all my engines and I went out to Iowa, and Kermit brought me a card. Away we went. And that was when I decided to retire. Um, I was sitting on the grid for the open class, sitting on the pole, and you know, quite frankly, it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I was about ready to go to sleep. And I looked over at this kid. Don't even remember who it was. Off pole, this kid was revved up. I mean, he was loaded for bear, uh, very intense, jumping around, and I thought to myself, there's a real good chance that I'm going to get beat tonight because I can just tell this kid wants it a lot more than I do. So we finished the night. I won the race, and that was it. I hung it up
Gone out on top.
because I knew that pretty soon I was going to start losing races because people wanted it more than me.
How old were you then?
48,
48.
1998,
And that's a pretty lengthy career, really. I mean,
40
you look
years
at
straight.
Yep. You look at drivers today, and many of them, they're, like myself, I've been in and out of the sport several times, and you have been in it every day of your life that I've known you until, now. You're still
And
doing it.
I still am. But the thing is, a lot of people I knew in the sport early went away, and now I see them at the VKA races. They went out,
Yeah.
they had their family, they got their education, yada yada yada, made a little money, came back to karting. Well, I never stopped. I mean, I went 40 years straight, and then I decided, okay, I don't want, I don't want to win like I once did. So I decided it'd be a good time to quit and focus on still enjoying karting, driving a stopwatch or driving a set of tools.
Mhm.
And I'm still doing that, still doing that today.
So, as we count down a few last minutes here, what is your highest of highs in this sport? What is your best memory?
There's too many to say one's better than the other. Obviously, winning the world deal with Lake, uh, you know, that ranks right up there. And I wasn't driving, but it didn't
Yeah.
matter. Didn't take away from the accomplishment. Didn't take away from the satisfaction of what it took to do it. I mean, we
Not bad for a couple of tourists, right?
well, I was gonna tell that story, but we went over there in '73. Two cocky Americans. We were both big national champions and on top of the world over here, and we were going over there and handing them guys their ass. Well, didn't work out that way. We got our ass handed to us in a big way, and we both said, you know what, this can't stand. we, we
Yeah.
gotta do better. So we just, we decided we go back every year, and every year we went back, we did a little better. Um, one year Lake didn't get to run because he got stomach virus and couldn't stay out of the porta potty, so he didn't get to run the main event. And then every year we got a little better, a little better, a little better. And then the year that in '78, when he ultimately ended up winning, we well, not we, he decided middle of the summer that he wasn't going to go. He was in the middle of a divorce and had a lot of stuff going on, and just said, I'm not going to be able to go this year. I said, well, that's too bad. Well, the more I thought about it, because he'd already said, I'm gonna miss this year. We'll go back next year. Well, when he said that, I got to thinking, we're gonna lose a lot of ground here. I'm gonna go without him, take my notebook, hang out with all the people we'd met, keep up on the latest and greatest. So that's what I decided to do. They called me up, I don't know, about a week before I was supposed to leave, and yapping on about something about business or something. And he said something about, are you going so and so? And I said, no, I can't. I'll be in Europe. Well, where are you going to Europe for? I said, I'm going to the World Champs. He said, you going? You going to the World Champs without me? I said, I told you I was going to go. And about 2 days later, he called me back. Well, I've changed my mind. Now I'm going to go. So by then, all of the arrangements had been canceled. All the arrangements with Burrell for chassis, all the arrangements with IAME for engines, everything had been canceled. And so, we basically put a motor in a bag. He put a little bag of tools in my suitcase, took his helmet and jacket, and here we went. We got over there and we went raking and scraping and beg, borrowing, and stealing to buy tires. Finally got us enough tires to run the race. And Burrell said, well, we don't have any of the special carts. All we can give you is a regular production cart. And said, well, that'll work. We took that, and then Garana, same thing. Well, all the special motors are gone. We'll find you a couple of motors, but they're not going to be what we normally would give you. Well, that's okay too. So that's what we took. Um, Back then, the garages were in alphabetical order. So that meant, Italy and France and Germany were all up in the high rent area. We were down at the other end where Unistatis in Venezuela pitted. So we just went down there and started doing our thing. And back then you had seated drivers who were the top performers in the countries where they had a CIK championship. The top two of those people were guaranteed a way into the main event. Everybody else had to race their way in. Well, since we didn't have any CIK racing over here, we had to run the original deal. And I think there was about 130 or 40 entries. And so the first, all the ones that didn't have a way in had to do a 68 car race, basically. So we came through that okay. And by luck, one of the top Burrell drivers, who was not a seated driver, he was kind of their fair-haired boy, and he was the fastest one, but he had not done well in the championship, so he also was in the deal where he had to run the races to get in. So when the smoke cleared, we ended up like fourth or fifth, and he didn't make the race. He crashed twice and didn't make the race. Well, all of a sudden, here comes all these engines and tires and wheels and this, that, and the other that Bobby had. And, once they found out that we were in, well, okay, we're going to give you all this good stuff. And me and Lake talked about it. And I said, you know what? We've been down here doing this thing on our own. We've done pretty good. We're in the race. We're kind of right up front. Why don't we just keep everything we've got, take their special tires, and let's just get on with it? So that's what we did. Truth be known, we never would have won the race had we not have got the tires, because there was the haves and the have-nots, and we were the have-nots. We did okay in the first preliminary races and stuff because most of the people in there did not have the special stuff. But when we got over into the main race, it was going to be a little different ball game. But once we got the tires, we were downtown then. And, that's kind of how it all went down. in the first main. Back then, it was best 2 out of 3 mains. In the first main, Lake was running third. There was actually 3 of them right nose to tail, and then about 2 cars back was one of the other Burrell drivers, Forsman. We'll go down to the last corner on the last lap, and the front 2 guys just barely touched. One of them started down the inside, just barely touched the other one, just enough that they both went a car wider than they should have, and Lake ducked under them, went up there about 150, 200 yards, and won the race. So
All
here
about
we are.
opportunity.
Yeah, well, you had to be there to do it, but we were. And by the rules, we were halfway there. Then we had a win and 2 more shots to get the second win. So we were in a pretty good place. And so anyway, went out there for the second main, and well, he started on the pole and looked up, and he was sixth. Then he's second. Then he's in front. Then he's back to sixth. The front group was just trying every way they could to kill each other. And it just kind of honestly came down to the fact that he wanted it more than they did. And he got in front with about 3 to go and just wasn't giving it up. It just was not going to happen. And he won the race, and that was pretty much the end of it. The story about the tourist, here comes Guarana was the owner of IAME that did the Comets and the Pirellas. Big man, probably 6'5",
Whew.
big imposing guy. He could have played the Godfather, you know, looked just like the Godfather. Anyway, big gigantic crowd down at the scales, waiting to get through the scale line and all that stuff. And here comes Guarana, and he gets down there and he tells me, he says, "I don't believe it. Here I spend thousands and get beat by 2 tourists."
It gave them the chance to have what we had, and
Yeah.
we still got beat.
Well, the fact of the matter is, though, it was a very, very popular win because the very small fraternity of people that ran at that level over there. Um, Everybody kind of knew everybody, um, and everybody knew. Everybody was standing there laughing at us when we went the first year with our clutches and ended up borrowing a direct
And
drive
they were
cart.
all direct drive, yeah.
Well, we fought that thing, and finally Eddie Cheever come over and he says, "Why do y'all work on the motor all the time? You don't ever work on the cart." Well, yada yada da. We went on another day. He said, "You need to let me loan you a cart." He said, "I got several carts that I ain't going to use. Why don't you let me give you one? Just put your motor over on one and see how you do with that." So, like we always did, me and Lake had a little powwow and said, "You know what? We ain't doing nothing. We've been here 3 days. We ain't picked up nothing. We have nothing to lose. Let's just try it." Put the thing together, and it was 2.5 seconds. The first practice faster than we'd been all week. We thought, well, look at this. Uh, Still didn't make the main event. Still got to be spectators, but uh, we learned a lot. Uh, Went home with our tail between our legs, pissed off to the maximum. And it was like, we will not let this stand. We're going to be back. We started buying European carts. Me and Lake started going to Memphis and Paducah, thrashing each other, trying to learn how to tune this stuff. What did it take? I'd build a motor, he'd build a motor. We just went into our own private little development program. And then in the meantime, we got hooked up with Danny LaMello, who still wants to kill me over that flip you showed earlier. But we got hooked up with him, and he was the BM importer. And we got access to be able to just go there and take the equipment and run it. I mean, they didn't hold our hand or anything, but
Right.
the motors and the chassis and everything was there, so we didn't have to worry about freight and bringing the wrong this and wrong that. They gave us all the stuff we needed. We ran with them for 2 years, and then Danny decided to go on. They closed down APCO, which was the importer over here.
Yeah.
Danny went on to General Electric, and APCO kind of fizzled from the standpoint of the BM part of it. And so we moved over, because by then we knew everybody. We moved over to Burrell and Perella, and that's where we stayed until we won. But the bottom line was, it was a very popular win, because pretty much everybody there was there the first time we came, and they all either were laughing at us or felt sorry for us, but they knew us, and they saw us come back every year. We didn't go under a factory team. We took our material and we went over there on our own. Um, never did run to have the factory guy read the spark plug or ask him this or ask him that. We basically just took the material, went down there and did our thing. And when we won, a lot of people were very happy to see that it was done that way, and that you did not have to be under a factory tent in order to have success. So it was a very popular win. Everybody was happy that we had done it.
Well, I
But
know
it,
we're definitely happy still
well,
after all
we're
these years.
happy too. But a lot of times when people win, they go, "Well, he wouldn't have won except this, or he wouldn't have won except that." Everybody was tickled to death. You know, First off, they were glad to see an American win, because the Americans never, we didn't show up. Um,
Yeah.
we didn't show up with a big team like the Italians, or a big team, like the Germans or the French or anything. It was me and Lake. Um, so it was a very popular win, and
So while we get to the tail end here, I want to go ahead and just recap. Tell us your official title that you hold today. I know that you're instrumental with the technical side with SKUSA and with IAME as the American liaison to that company with the two importers here. Explain to us briefly how does that relationship work, and what do you do for those two entities?
well, I was the importer. I was one of the importers. Um, when they decided, after Guarana died, it was taken over by the Ravelli family, who I had known since I met them. I met Felice in 1974 in Portugal, when we ran there. The year that Lake didn't get to run because he uh, couldn't stay out of the outhouse. So I'd known Felice forever.
Shitter story.
Subsequently, I met his brother, and when Guarana passed, the company passed to Felice, because they had some stock in it over the years, and Guarana, his wife passed before him, and he didn't have any kids. So when the smoke cleared, the factory passed to Felice. Well, long story short, when they decided to change the distribution over here, they wanted one in the east and one in the west. And, Felice actually flew to Chattanooga, and he says, "I got some bad news. You're out." I go, "Well, that's awful nice after 40 years." "Well, we got to do this, got to do that, da 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 da. You don't fit in our plans on the sales side anymore." I go, "Well, okay, fine. Now the good part, we want to hire you for the technical side. We want you to be the liaison between the two new importers and the factory, because we've known you for 40 years. You know us. You know how we do things. You know how the system works. The technical side is as good as anybody. We want you to do that." So um, the two importers split my inventory, and I took up the position of technical liaison between the United States and the factory.
And then you also hold a technical position with SKUSA, correct?
Yeah. John Motley, who was the tech guy from early on in the SKUSA history. Um, I had known him because he and I were both on the IKF board. We were very good friends, always shared ideas, worked very close together on the IKF tech committee. And then when I started helping, they had a little bit of problem with the West Coast outfit with the inventory. They had some problems with total disorganization, buying the wrong stuff, buying too much of this, not enough of that. Long story. Tom had me come out, said, I need you to come out here and, kind of straighten my inventory problem out. I walked in and I said, this is not a weekend project, Tom. You got Hiroshima here. So anyway, I started helping him with that. And this was kind of along the same time John, his health started failing a little bit. So I was kind of helping John also. And then when John passed, I kind of inherited the top position in the technical end of it. Uh, Several of the people who John had working for him were getting on up in age a little bit. Some of them really, I think, had lost a little interest. COVID came along. A couple of them didn't want to go to any races because of COVID. One thing, then another. So I took over the SKUSA Tech, started bringing in, new people for that, uh, and because I was also helping the West Coast distribution, which is also owned by Tom.
Mhm.
It all, kind of wrapped itself into a neat little bow. But
So now here you are, um, doing what you do best, which is the technical side of karting. What does the future hold for Lynn? What do you do next?
probably die.
Oh, come on. You're
Well,
too
I
damn
mean,
mean to die.
I'm 74 years old. I'm not getting any younger. I have to face the facts that somewhere along in here, I'm going to have to slow down. I mean, I'm going to fight it every inch of the way, do it every day, but, it's going to happen sooner or later. Uh, I also, I also am very involved in the VKA.
Yep.
Same thing happened there. One of the one of the guys that had pretty much handled the technical stuff there for many years started wanting to back off a little bit, and about the time I was getting involved a little bit, and he and I were already working together a little bit, and next thing you know, I'm the guy. So in VKA, we all tend to have our own little area of interest, expertise, this, that, and the other. Um, what I bring to the table is, the technical side, writing the rules, this, that, and the other. I spend about half my time with that bunch trying to make rules or convince them to make rules that do not make the same mistakes that were made previously. You can look back 30 years and go, yeah, that was a great class, but here's what killed it. Well, you have
Right.
to avoid doing those things again. And that's
Well, we
kind of
face that
where
a lot in road racing too, you know?
yeah, and I'm sure, quite frankly, my friend Van Gilder probably does a lot to hold that one in the road too, because he's been around and seen a lot.
Yep. Yep.
But you need to learn from your mistakes if possible. I mean, if you put your hand on the stove and it burns the heck out of you, you don't want to put that other hand up there to confirm it. And
Like I
I
tell
kind
people,
of
you get your nose
yeah.
rubbed in enough times, you quit.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it like, if we know what was good about this the first time and we know what was bad about it, and we're going to do it again, which is what we're doing in VKA, we got to be sure that we do the good part and don't do the bad part. So,
Lynn, I thank you for your time more than you know. Your influence on the sport, on me as a person, as a former driver and participant in the sport, has been played over my head for decades. And I truly thank you for being the kind of person I was allowed to be and sit back and watch you do the Lynn Haddock that you are. And that has helped so many people in the sport. And I thank you for what you continue to do for the sport. Thank you very much.
Well, I try to give back because it has given me so much. And one thing about being old is it does come with a little bit of experience. You kind of know what you did wrong, what you don't want to do again.
Right.
So I try to bring that back. And if I don't do anything else but that, then I'll go out smiling. That's for sure. One thing I would like to do, if we do this again, I would like to figure out how we can do a little better job of.
I'm coming to you. We're just going to come down there and do it.
Well, I mean, we can do that, or we can figure out how to make this phone where it'll turn around.
Well, we'll do that too.
I think I do think I have a lot of stuff here that if we could get it where people could see it a little better, I think they would enjoy it.
And in closing, guys, he has a hell of a shop, a lot of stuff to see. You only saw a very fraction of what he has in the collection. If you ever have the time, you're in Chattanooga or the area, give Lynn a call. He is found on the internet. You can find him. You can find him pretty much anywhere. And give him a call. He can let you come over and go through his collection of stuff. And I cannot thank him enough. Want to go to our sponsor slide real quick. Have to thank all of our sponsors that make this happen for me, and they will be more engaging throughout this next season. And I'm sure Daniel's over there. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Well, shit and shinola. Anyway, I will go on and I will thank American Kart Road Race, AKRA. AKRA is the #1 road racing sanctioning body in the country. They have some really cool things coming for dirt as well as four-cycle. Doorstep Peppers. If you haven't looked into Doorstep Peppers LLC, please find them on the internet. Amazing spices. I'm a foodie. Obviously, I would be fat if I weren't. Mach 3 fiber or Mach 5 fiberglass. That would be Marcus Purdue. He has some great fiberglass. He is still producing for road racing as well as some vintage and some novelty stuff. Let's see, who else do we have in there? We have Boxo Tools USA. I have my Boxo tools. Use them at Daytona. They were incredible. They were flawless, lifetime warranty. They take all the guesswork out of the tool selection for you guys that are racing. The product that I have is all metric, so it's for European style carts. And I have talked to them about some suggestions for upgrading that. Trailer alarms, I'm going to tell you right now, funny ass story. I can't make this up. Alan's sick in the hotel room at Daytona. He sends me a text message. I'm moving the trailer over to the track. Hey, did you turn the trailer alarm on? Totally friggin' forgot. No sooner did I read that. The lights are flashing. The axles lock up right there on Speedway Boulevard. The siren is going off. I'm thinking, oh, dear Lord, this is embarrassing. I get into the gas station. I get the damn thing turned off. People are looking at me. It works. It truly works. That alarm system is top notch. Traileralarms.com. Last but not least, our core sponsor, and that's Tillotson Racing. There are more than just carburetors. T4 Nations Cup package. You guys need to look into this. It's the only four-cycle international world championship offered, and only Tillotson provides that. They will be going, I believe they're in Ireland for 2025, so that's usually in September. If you are interested in the T4, get a hold of me. You can get a hold of Kart Rising in Florida. You can send me email, text message, DM on here. I'm happy to turn you on to the new Tillotson T4. And other than that, I'll see you guys at the racetrack. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks.